Okay, so now to start off, we're going to look at the beginnings of civilization with a question mark. The beginnings of Western civilization, and that probably leads into the question, well, how do we define what a civilization is? And pause on that for a minute. Think about it. How do you define what a civilization is? Some people will say things like laws and government, right? So that people start coming together and we agree on common laws. We have a ruler. That defines civilization. In contrast to, humans prior to this were nomadic. They were wandering from place to place. They're hunter-gatherers. There's, nobody's really doing anything very specific. A civilization allows for human beings to specialize. Because if I'm living in a civilization and I have people who are really good at hunting and really good at sewing and really good at farming, I can do something else because they're going to provide my food and I'm going to provide whatever my specialization is. So civilization does lend itself to specialization and allowing humans to prosper. Obviously, if you're spending all your day finding water and finding food, you can't develop any further than that. The contrast here, possibly a contrast, is culture. So if we define civilization in that one way, laws and order, etc., then what makes a culture? Because these are two different terms. So I think one thing to look at when we talk about culture is the language, the myths, the religion, the foods, right? So all civilizations have their own culture, right? But there's the civilization, you are civilized, and then there's the culture within that civilization. So that's a way to start looking at the beginnings. We're going to look at these three civilizations. We have the Sumerians, the Akkadians, and the Babylonians. And they are one after another. And they pop up where? They pop up right around the Tigris and the Euphrates River. And as you can see here at the top, Mesopotamia means the land between the two rivers, also known as the Fertile Crescent. Why? Well, because that's where you can grow food. So we have the Code of Hammurabi that we're going to look at would be the laws of a civilization, and the culture is reflected within that law. So you'll see here the Babylonians are actually the later civilization that happens there, right? So we're going to, let's go click onto this. Let's go look a little bit more further into Hammurabi. What do we learn about the Babylonian civilization when we read the laws? The laws that I have uploaded for you, you peruse through it and you can see what are they interested in? What are they trying to show? Ask yourself these questions. What is valued to this civilization according to what laws are on the record? You'll notice things about property. You'll notice things about slavery. You'll notice things about the value of women, and then the appropriate punishments thereof. So if you do try to steal something and you get caught, you're going to be harshly punished. So that's telling us the values of that civilization within those codes and within that law. And also what you will see here is that the writing is done in cuneiform. So I've also posted some examples of cuneiform up in Blackboard. It's just like a reed, and there's plenty of reeds in the marshes, right, by the river. And you press the reed into clay, and you form these kind of sharp lines, and that forms cuneiform. If you go back a little bit in time, the Sumerians had pictograms, and eventually that turns into our phonetic writing system. But that takes thousands of years, right? So the Code of Hammurabi is written in cuneiform, and you can see examples of that, like I said. Also, at the time, the laws don't get into this much, but from what scholars know, the people were not overly religious. They did have gods, and the whole purpose of humans was to serve the gods. There wasn't this kind of relationship where humans were, had this benevolent relationship with any of the gods, and the gods were looking out for the humans. No, not at all. The gods were in complete control. Humans had no choice to do whatever. And I think you can understand that, because that's the world that they were living in. They're just settling down. They're just learning how to cooperate with each other. And how do they react to the outside world? Well, it doesn't seem like they're in control of much. So then therefore, it must be that the gods are doing things to them. And there's not necessarily any kind of idea of benevolence or, the gods being nice to them. Well, what do you know about the gods here? If you look here at these words, the gods were polytheistic, anthropomorphic, and pantheistic. So that means there were many gods. Anthropomorphic means that they took on the likenesses of humans, and pantheistic. They were all over the place. They spread all over, and they were just like humans, except they had supernatural abilities. What does that sound like? That probably sounds like the Greek gods, right? And then we will look more a little bit at the literature of the Epic of Gilgamesh, which actually comes more from the Sumerian time period. So that's just a short little introduction to the beginning of civilization and the Code of Hammurabi. A few things that I've noticed about Mesopotamia, and these are just kind of anecdotes, but from the Mesopotamians, we get the 7-day week, 60-minute hour, fractions, the 360-degree circle, and I also have read that they were the first people to cultivate beer, at least in the Western Hemisphere. So where would we be without them? Okay.